Hey friends, welcome back to the Irony Shelf. Tonight, an entry from our audio archive, The Mouse by Saki. Now, prepare to examine the case of the Fastidious Fugitive. Theodoric Vola had been brought up, from infancy to the threshold of middle age, by a loving mother, whose primary concern had been to keep him sheltered from what she called the rougher realities of life. When she died, she left Theodoric alone in a world that was as real as ever, and a good deal rougher than he considered it had any need to be. To a man of his temperament and upbringing, even a simple railway journey was filled with petty annoyances and irritating disruptions. As he settled himself down in a standard train compartment one September morning, he was conscious of ruffled feelings and general mental agitation. He had been staying at a country vicarage, the household of which was certainly neither brutal nor wild, but their management of the home had been of that careless type which frequently invites disaster. The pony carriage that was to take him to the train station had been forgotten, and when the moment for his departure drew near, the handyman who should have readied the vehicle was nowhere to be found. In this emergency, Theodoric, to his silent but very intense disgust, found himself obliged to work with the vicar's daughter to harness the pony. This necessitated groping about in a poorly lit outhouse called a stable, and smelling very like one, except in areas where it smelt of mice. Without being afraid of mice, Theodoric still classed them among the rougher incidents of life, and considered that Providence, with a little exercise of moral courage, might long ago have recognized they were not indispensable, and withdrawn them from circulation. As the train glided out of the station, Theodoric's anxious imagination convinced him that he was exhaling a weak odor of the stable yard, and possibly showing a mouldy straw or two on his otherwise well-brushed suit. Fortunately, the only other occupant of the compartment, a lady of about the same age as himself, seemed to prefer sleep rather than scrutiny. The train was not due to stop till the final station was reached, in about an hour's time, and the carriage was of the old-fashioned sort. There was no access to a corridor, and therefore no additional travelling companions were likely to intrude on Theodoric's semi-privacy. And yet, the train had scarcely settled into its steady rhythm before he became reluctantly but vividly aware that he was not alone with the sleeping lady. He was not even alone in his own clothes. A warm, creeping movement over his flesh betrayed the unwelcome and highly resented presence, unseen but unmistakable, of a stray mouse that had evidently dashed into its current impromptu sanctuary during the chaos of the pony harnessing. Furtive stamps, desperate shakes, and wildly directed pinches failed to dislodge the intruder, whose motto, indeed, seemed to be "Excelsior, ever upward." Meanwhile, the lawful occupant of the clothes lay back against the cushions and endeavoured to rapidly find some means for putting an end to the dual ownership. It was unthinkable that he should continue for the entire hour to be a crowded public hostel for vagrant mice, for already his imagination had at least doubled the number of the alien invasion. On the other hand, nothing less drastic than partially undressing would ease him of his tormentor. Yet to undress in the presence of a lady, even for so laudable a purpose, was an idea that made his ear-tips tingle with abject shame. He had never been able to bring himself even to expose his ankles in sheer silk socks in the presence of the fair sex. And yet, the lady remained to all appearances soundly and securely asleep. The mouse, on the other hand, seemed to be trying to crowd a lifetime of travel into a few strenuous minutes. If there is any truth in the theory of reincarnation, this particular mouse must surely have been a member of the mountaineering Alpine Club in a former life. Intermittently, in its eagerness to ascend, it lost its footing and slipped for half an inch or so, and then, in fright, or more probably temper, it bit him. Theodoric was goaded into the most audacious undertaking of his life. Turning beet red and keeping an agonized watch on his slumbering companion, he swiftly and noiselessly secured the ends of his railway blanket to the luggage racks on either side. A substantial curtain now hung across the compartment between the two travellers. In the narrow dressing room that he had thus improvised, he proceeded with frantic haste to partially extricate himself and remove the mouse entirely from the surrounding layers of tweed and wool garments. As the freed mouse leaped wildly to the floor, the blanket slipped from its fastenings at both ends and came down with a heart-curdling flop. And nearly at that exact moment, the awakened sleeper began to open her eyes. With a movement even quicker than the mouse, Theodoric pounced on the blanket. He hauled its ample folds chin-high over his dismantled body as he collapsed into the far corner of the carriage. The blood raced and beat in the veins of his neck and forehead, while he braced himself, waiting helplessly for the emergency cord to be pulled. The lady, however, contented herself with a silent stare at her strangely muffled companion. How much had she seen? Theodoric queried to himself. And in any case, what on earth must she think of his present predicament? "I think I've caught a chill," he said desperately. "Really, I'm sorry," she replied. "I was just going to ask you if you would open this window. I believe it's malaria," he added, his teeth chattering slightly, as much from fright as from a desire to support his fabrication. "I've got some brandy in my travel bag. If you'll kindly bring it down for me," said his companion. "Not for the world. I mean, I never take anything for it," he assured her earnestly. "I suppose you caught it in the tropics?" she asked. Theodoric, whose acquaintance with the tropics was limited to the chest of Ceylon tea that he received as an annual gift from his uncle, felt that even the malaria was slipping from him. Would it be possible, he wondered, to disclose the real state of affairs to her in small installments? "Are you afraid of mice?" he ventured, turning, if possible, an even deeper shade of scarlet. "Not unless they came in exceptionally large numbers, like those that ate up Bishop Hatto. Why do you ask?" I had one crawling inside my clothes just now," said Theodoric, in a voice that scarcely seemed his own. "It was a most awkward situation." "It must have been, if you wear your clothes at all tight," she observed. "But mice do have such strange ideas of comfort. I had to get rid of it while you were asleep." Then, with a gulp, he added, "It was getting rid of the mouse that brought me to this," he continued. "Surely leaving off one small mouse wouldn't bring on a chill," she exclaimed, with a levity that Theodoric found abominable. Evidently, she had detected something of his predicament and was enjoying his confusion. All the blood in his body seemed to have mobilized into one concentrated blush, while a wave of shame, worse even than a myriad of mice, crept across his very soul. Then, as reason reasserted itself, his acute humiliation was swallowed by sheer panic. With every minute that passed, the train was rushing closer to the crowded and bustling terminus, where dozens of prying eyes would be exchanged for the one paralyzing pair that currently gazed at him from the far corner of the carriage. There was one slender, despairing chance, which the next few minutes must decide. His travelling companion might relapse into a blessed slumber. But as the minutes throbbed by, that chance faded away. The furtive glance which Theodoric stole at her from time to time disclosed only an unblinking wakefulness. "I think we must be arriving soon," she presently observed. With growing terror, Theodoric had noted the recurring stacks of small, ugly dwellings that heralded the journey's end. Her words now acted as a signal that set him into motion. Like a hunted beast breaking cover and dashing madly toward some other haven of momentary safety, he threw aside his blanket and struggled frantically into his now disheveled clothes. He was conscious of dull suburban stations racing past the window, of a choking, hammering sensation in his throat and heart, and of an icy silence in that corner toward which he dared not look. Then, as he sank back in his seat, clothed and almost delirious with relief, the train slowed down to a final crawl, and the woman spoke. "Would you be so kind," she asked, "as to get me a porter, to put me into a cab? It's a shame to trouble you when you're feeling unwell, but being blind makes one so utterly helpless at a railway station." And here we conclude our reading of The Mouse, written by Saki and respectfully adapted for the modern listener. In 1909, the year this story was published, Edwardian train carriages were a series of drafty, disconnected, walled-off compartments. Once a traveller entered from the outside platform, the door clicked shut, and from that point forward, there was no physical retreat from one's travelling companions. For a fastidious gentleman like Theodoric, this architectural quirk was enough to transform a brief commute into an inescapable social courtroom. Saki engineered this claustrophobic trap specifically to show just how quickly the grand illusion of societal dignity can be derailed by a creature with a mountain-climbing disposition. Now, as we leave the fastidious fugitive to his crumpled dignity, if you find a certain charm in these classic stories, we invite you to subscribe and join us here at the Irony Shelf. Your support helps us to continue curating these volumes for the audio archive. Thank you for listening. I look forward to sharing our next story with you very soon.